Here we go. Hello, welcome to another episode of Analog Adventures. My name is Crispin Jeffrey Frank. I'm a co-owner of Stacks Book Club, and joining me tonight is one of our all-time favorite authors at Stacks Book Club, Lyla Sage. Lyla lives in the Wild West with her loyal companion and sweet old blind rescue pitbull. She writes romance that feels like her favorite things, sunshine and big blue skies, that will also say features well-rounded male characters that I appreciate. She's also the author of Done and Dusted, Swift and Saddle, Lost and Lassoed, and Wild and Wrangled. We were actually talking to Lyla on the eve of Wild and Wrangled hitting the shelves across the country. When Lyla's not reading or not writing, she's reading. Lyla, welcome to Analog Adventures. How are you tonight?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me, Crispin. It's always such a joy to do anything with Stacks Book Club.
Well, we appreciate that. So we've done two uh, book release parties with you. So now we're doing the podcast, and we're having a big old party tomorrow night at our shop. We have a whole bunch of Rebel Blue fans ready to come out and party with each other for one last go round. What's it like on the eve of your tour kicking off?
It's kind of surreal. I feel like I've been waiting for this day forever, because Wild and Wrangled has lived in my head for, years at this point, but it also feels like it appeared really, really quickly, more quickly than anticipated. I feel like I got home from the Lost and Lassoed tour like yesterday. So it's kind of tricky, but I'm so excited. I can't wait to share this ending with people. Wild and Wrangled, I've never felt content about a book. I always have a lot of anxiety before release day, but I just feel so content and proud of this one. With Lost and Lassoed and Swift and Saddled, I was filled with like so much anxiety. Done and Dusted, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just vibing back then. But with the other two, I felt a lot of anxiety. And with this one, I feel just really calm and content and just excited for people to, get to go back to this world that they've come to love so much and that they're so kind to visit me in so often. And I feel just like so much joy.
Yeah, what is that like watching like the fandom build and build and build? You literally have a fandom.com page now. Yeah, I looked at it before we started trying to prep for your bio. So yeah, you're on fandom.com. There's a Lyla Sage universe out there that people are contributing to. What's that process been? I mean, I know, you self-published a couple years ago and now you're on your third, fourth major book tour. What's that
Yeah.
like, Lyla?
It's crazy. I think like if you told me that all of this was fake and I was just gonna like wake up tomorrow, I'd be like, that super tracks, actually. I don't know. And the thing is like things just get bigger and bigger, but to me, they continue like with my readers. I've built such a great community with them that it kind of feels the same to me. I'm so it feels so unique that I feel so connected to them that the bit like I don't really notice that the numbers of them get bigger because I just feel like it's just like my group of gals that have been hanging out with me for 4 years. But it's so rewarding. Like every day, new people are discovering Done and Dusted and getting to kind
Mhm.
of dive into this like Lila Land universe that I've created in my head, which is basically just like a fake version of Wyoming so far. And I love it. It's a joy. I think my community of readers and my fandom, I guess, I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to go look at that page, make sure things are accurate. Um, it's like the best part of the gig is getting to share this with others. So I'm jazzed.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And I know this is like the last go around, but I think readers out there will be revisiting Rebel Blue, many, many times. I don't feel like it's the kind of story that you pick up one time and you put down and you don't come back to. I don't read that much romance, to be very honest, like a handful of titles a year. But I have read all four of your books and I've enjoyed them all thoroughly.
Oh my God, that means so much to me. I mean, I think Rebel Blue just kind of like for me, I think it's how it started, right? For me, it started as a place where I could go when I needed something, I needed like sunshine and big blue skies. It started as a place of refuge for me, and I think that's part of its genetic makeup, and so it kind of has become that way for other people unintentionally, and I think that's really beautiful. And I always say that, this is the end of the series, the last full-length novel, but Rebel Blue is always going to be there when you need it. I'll keep the gate open anytime you want to go back.
Yeah, I'm excited for what comes next for you. I know you've teased some of the projects in the works that are going. I wake up every day thinking like, will I grow up to be Amos Ryder one day? So that is my lifelong goal now is to be a father like Amos. So I just want to let you know that you've touched me in a very special way, in a very personal way with the character that really means a lot to me. And he's such a small part of the books, but to me, without Amos, there is no Rebel Blue.
I agree with you. I think with like I think about Amos and Stella's like love story, and it is like the foundation upon which this entire world is built. And it's so easy for me when people ask me like my favorite character. I think that they're gonna stump me or that I'm not gonna be able to pick. And I'm like, Amos. Easy, easy peasy, because he's so special and he's such a wonderful amalgamation of like all of the wonderful and secure and dynamic men in my life that have really influenced the way that I like write men and the way that I choose to see them. And it's been a joy to watch other people fall in love with Amos. And I love that you love Amos. I think your Amos's brother is in the next series, and I think you'll probably like him too.
Nice. Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, as someone that like dips in and out of the genre, and I'm not committed to, read a whole bunch of it. Um, but what I find really interesting or refreshing, I mean not refreshing, it's not the right word because I don't know that other people aren't doing it, to be fair. But and I think from Amos, you start to see through the other writer men that sense of security and self-confidence that you mentioned. Um, I think in a world where you would see cowboys in Wyoming and have maybe a very like clear idea of the types of thoughts and actions that, men from Wyoming might,
Yeah.
have in the actions they would take. Um, Getting presented with a cadre of male characters that are at least they feel progressive thinking, they feel like they are in touch with their emotions, they communicate in a way that's like open and healthy and honest. Uh, so I appreciate that idea of like shining a light on, what a healthy male partner can look like.
And it was an honor to, because I'm from, a small rural community. I think the most important thing to me is like portraying rural communities in the light that I know them. And I know that that's not everybody's experience with like a small town or a rural community or, even with a cowboy, whether that cowboy is from Wyoming or from Texas or Oklahoma, wherever it is. But it was just really important to me to showcase like those men as I know them, because I am who I am because of men like Amos Ryder. And that was just really important to me because I think there's a lot of, misconceptions, but also really valid experiences that people
Mhm.
have that inform it. And so it was nice to just be able to show my perspective on it, and hopefully add to the genre in that way too, with like a perspective that is authentic. And that I think sometimes, like, especially kind of in the political climate we're in, we have a tendency to sometimes essentialize people and like, right, like think about blue states are
Mhm.
better or like more essential than red ones. And I have consistently grown up in the heart of red ones and kind and wonderful progressive people exist there, and they're just as important as everybody else. And so it's been a joy to kind of explore that part of my upbringing in this series.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the genre. Romance is booming.
Yeah.
As a bookstore owner, we see it every single day. Uh, the genre is really just absolutely on fire right now. I think it's really awesome to see. I wanted to get your perspective on when did romance become a part of your reading life and how has it evolved and changed and like how are you contributing to that, to the changing
Yeah.
ecosystem that is romance?
I mean, romance is so special, right? Like love is always going to exist and it's going to exist in many forms. And I think, romance is radical in the way that it's been on the forefront of that. And it's radical in the way that, especially now, there are so many like diverse perspectives on romance and showcasing joy in, again, the world we live in is like a radical and wonderful thing. And so romance is just an honor to be a part of. I some of the greatest writers of all time, in my opinion, like Beverly Jenkins and Nora Roberts are romance writers. So it's great, like when I see myself even maybe kind of potentially near them on a bookstore shelf, I like want to collapse. Um, but for me, romance really came into play when I was in junior high. I my And Nicholas Sparks is not a romance novelist, but he tells romantic stories, right? I will never forget my seventh grade English teacher giving me a walk to remember of all things. And she was like, this is great. And I spent my entire weekend crying in my bed, and my mom kept walking past and was like, is she? Are we okay? Are we good? And I was like, no, but I just like love. And after that, I dove into like young adult romances like Sarah Dessen, who is phenomenal. And I was really into like fantasy romances. Obviously, I was at like the prime time of Twilight as
Mhm.
well, which really like impacted my entire brain in such an interesting way. But I thought I loved love, and I do maintain that there is not any story that can't be improved upon by two people kissing. And I think a like recent example of that that's very tangible, two examples are Twisters with Glenn Powell. Like, why
I
were they
know
not kissing?
there's like, yeah, there's like big controversy about whether they would or wouldn't or should or shouldn't towards the end of that movie.
And they should. And in my opinion, and I also think we saw it with Top Gun Maverick, another Glenn Powell movie. I think that Rooster and Hangman should have kissed, and I maintain that. I stand by that. And I think the movie would have been better because of it. Just like in the original, if Iceman and Maverick would have kissed, it would have been better.
The tension was all there. It was there.
It was really there.
Yeah.
Think that's why I craft tension so well, because I like Top Gun.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think I remember my mom, in the mid 80s dating myself, reading romance. I feel like even back then it was like the idea of like Fabio on the cover, and it was like kind of like a joke, or it was like almost like a closeted thing. Like you people read Danielle Steele, but no one wanted to admit to reading Danielle Steele. At least that's how it
Right.
felt for me as like, a young kid growing up. And now the the genre is so much more accepted, I feel. There's so much more
Mhm.
openness with like the acceptability of it, and it's celebrated, and like all the different diverse ways that the genre is bringing characters to the page at a faster rate than I think any other fiction genre is.
Totally.
Uh, which I think is super amazing. Like, every single day there's a new prime character that is shining a light on a different subset of people out there that have been waiting to see themselves in literature for, their entire life. I think that's one of the other really amazing things that romance does. The gate seems to be way more open for a variety of storytelling.
Totally. I agree with that so much. And I think there is still a little bit of like that stigma there. Like romance is not real literature. But I also think like romance is like to me kind of like the Godfather because like every genre that you love can be a subgenre of romance, right? Like sci-fi romance or horror
Mhm.
romance or Western romance, right? Like anything can have kind of that romantic storyline. And also it really like I've really loved, I think over the past like 5 years, again, as like more diverse stories have come into play, right? Like we're reading more queer romances, more romances with BIPOC characters. I'm really excited about Danica Nava's cowboy romance that's coming in July. It's a like a native romance, which right, those are the original
Yeah.
cowboys, and like white guys definitely wouldn't have referred to themselves as a cowboy when that term started coming around because it was seen as like a less than. And so to watch kind of these different historical perspectives make their way into a genre that prioritizes kind of like radical joy, I think is really special.
Yeah, I think it's been really fun to watch, and it really wasn't until I became an actual bookseller that like I started to really like see the genre for really what it is and what it's become. So it's awesome that you're a part of that and contributing to that legacy now. Um, we did take some questions from some of our Instagram followers. If you're open for a couple questions tonight,
Absolutely.
awesome.
Totally.
Cool. So first question we got, if not Wyoming, where?
Nowhere. I mean, I do like kick around ideas about like, good old Tucson because that's got like such a wonderful aesthetic. But I think probably like I think I would go anywhere in like the Rocky Mountain range. Like I think the thing I'm so inspired by what it looks like out my window, and where I grew up that I just like find so much joy and so much inspiration there. And I just love Wyoming. There's something so deeply romantic and kind of untouched about Wyoming, and I love it.
Awesome. Next question, kind of like dovetailing on that. will there ever be a Lyla Sage book in an urban environment?
Ooh, I mean, I maybe like a fish out of water situation. I'm not a city girl, but I do love to cosplay as one every once in a while. But I don't know. I never say never to anything, but I think if I wanted to go, because I think about this all the time because I love Twilight, I love paranormal romances. Those are like my bread and butter on romances. I think if I wanted to go down like a more strictly paranormal route where someone's like a vampire or a demon or something like that, I would go urban. But I don't know for sure. That's a good question. Something to noodle on.
Nice. All right. Who do you picture as Gus? This person says they picture Riley Green.
Okay. Well,
So not Riley Green, all right?
not Riley Green. And I have so much one-sided beef with this man because everybody pictures him as Gus. He's like a country singer. And I
I
I
have to
don't
Google
like
him. I
him.
don't know who he is.
I don't he gives me bad vibes, Crispin. He gives me bad vibes, so I can't accept that he is Gus for me. I think it's just because he's like conventionally attractive and has a mustache, but I don't think that like I think he's too attractive. Like, I don't think that my men look like that. I think they look like m more kind of aggressively normal, and the fact that they're attractive is coming from, the girl that's in love with them.
That's funny.
So, yeah, that Riley Green, not for me. I'm not very good at picturing my characters because they just like look the way they look in my head. But I did disappoint some gals on Threads recently when I was like, Riley Green is not for me.
Is
That's not my
not
man.
that's not the guy.
But if
That's
he's there,
funny.
Gus, that's okay. He's just
That's
not
all
me.
right. Yeah. All right, last question we have uh from the folks. Why does outdoors play such a central role in your stories?
Because I love the outdoors. I grew up with a very like classic, original kind of sportsman, outdoorsman dad. I also grew up around a lot of animals like horses and cattle and stuff like that. And I think when outside is when I feel the most like myself. I'm also very passionate about like national parks and conservation. And oftentimes I think there's a perception that like ranching and conservation aren't two things that go
Mhm.
together, or farming and conservation. And so I wanted again to like shine a light on the fact that most of the ranchers that I know are like very concerned about the welfare and well-being of the planet, and are actively kind of like taking steps to be like a steward of the land in the best way. And they care really deeply about the land that they occupy and share with animals. And so it just like, and the thing is I don't notice it because it's just kind of the way that my brain works until I get questions like this that are like, everybody's outside, like the descriptors for the atmosphere are really good, or like, even in my bio, when I say that I love sunshine and big blue skies, I think that's just where I feel the most at home. And so without doing it on purpose, I've also infused that into my characters. Like, there's not one character of mine that's like a self-insert or something. I'm not really interested in that, but I think all of them, unfortunately, have like some piece of me that kind of gets like sprinkled
Mhm. Mhm.
in just by nature, just by of how personal writing is in general. So, I just like love the outside and I care about the outside and I want other people to also care about the outside. And I think that unintentionally and sometimes intentionally comes through in my stories.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be hard to write about Wyoming and not feature the
Right.
outdoors. But yeah. So let's talk about Wild and Wrangled. So we are here. It's the fourth book. I think I've heard you say before. It's the love story you knew maybe first or really early on, but
Yeah.
you waited until now. What can you tell us about Wild and Wrangled?
Wow, that's good. Crispin, you're like really showing me that you pay attention when I talk. So that is really nice. But it was the first story that I conceptualized after I decided on Luke and Emmy being the first one. So it was before Teddy and Gus, before Wes and Ada. There was Cam and Dusty, and I waited on it because it's a second chance romance. And to me, as like somebody who was just trying to like do something and trying to write, that felt very intimidating because I don't like second chance romances because if you do me dirty, like I'm done so. And so I wanted to like have the chops to write it, I guess, have a little bit
Mhm.
more practice. Um, and I also loved the idea of bookending the series with two people, Luke and Cam, who aren't necessarily a part of like the writer nuclear family, but are these like people that Amos has picked up along the way and that have found their home and their family there. I thought that was like a special way to bookend it. But yeah, these two came to me like almost immediately and like almost fully formed as far as like characteristics and appearance and story and motivation and like their path was it felt like so clear to me and it also felt like the perfect opportunity to end on because of like the familial reason but also because um it's really rewarding for me in this book to see everybody else, all of the writers, like pushing these two toward their happily ever after. It was just really special to write. When I started writing it, I like breathed a sigh of relief because there was so much pressure wrapped into Gus and Teddy because everybody was really like rabid and excited about them. And I don't think I coped with that very well. And so I was really scared to start writing Wild and Wrangled. I was like, well, what if I had to live up to other people's expectations on Gus and Teddy? What if I can't live up to my own here? Like, what if
Mhm.
that part of me is gone? And but I sat down and I just started going. I usually start in the middle of my books. I don't write chronologically, and it just like came out, and it was such a rewarding and kind of like lush and dreamy experience.
That's so interesting that you start in the middle. So you start in the middle, does it always stay the middle, or does it sometimes end up not
Sometimes
in the
ends up
middle?
like it usually ends up a little further than the
Okay.
middle. Usually a little closer to the end. But my outline is I just like pick like five events that I want to happen, and then I start writing around those events. And I pick five because there's an identified midpoint, and so that's the event that I normally start with. And sometimes it moves forward or backward or whatever. But I don't like to start at the beginning because I feel like if I just dive in, then I know them already. And so I
Hmm.
don't have to spend the beginning getting to know them. And so then when I go back to the beginning, I'm able to kind of infuse these characters with what I've already learned about them, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's some I think some differences between Wild and Wrangle and some of the other stories that I really liked. One, I don't think it's a spoiler to say there's some class issues at play in this relationship, which I really was like interested in reading about and sort of like seeing how these two characters sort of deal with their upbringings and the familial disparity that they kind of bring to the relationship. But then also I feel like there are deeper flashbacks in this book to these two characters younger, and you kind of get to see some of the other characters in the series as
Yeah.
younger characters. Was that intentional, or is that just sort of how, because it's a second chance, we have to know how the first time went, or was it like intentional to bring in some more
Yeah.
history?
It wasn't intentional in like having explicit flashbacks. I wrote the flashbacks myself as like a writing exercise because, right, I wanted to make sure that I understood these two at a very like deep level. And I needed to make sure that the adults that kind of came to my brain first also matched kind of like this early young love story. So I originally kind of just wrote them as an exercise for me to be able to write the book better. And I remember sending my editor was like, we need more here. And so I sent her um a couple of the flashbacks and she's like, great, done. Like add those in. Like these are great. And I think they really give us a good view of Cam and Dusty. And so that's kind of how those came about. But I also think it brings to light what you said, like how these two come from completely different worlds and neither one of them shy away from the world that they came from. And I think in order to make that feel like a believable part of their character, you have to see the foundation of that laid early on and the foundation that these two have of not only being in love with one another, but genuinely liking one another and wanting to be friends. Because I think that's kind of what carries us through where we see that Dusty really has never like lost feelings for Cam. I think that sometimes in romance we're so focused on the love that we forget about the like and that these
Mhm.
two should like genuinely like each other as people. And I think seeing kind of the back end of their relationship really helps set that foundation and makes their love story a little bit more believable that he's kind of been pining and yearning for her for a long time.
In like in reading this book and reading about these characters and sort of seeing like what do the younger version of them look like and how does that compare to who they are when the story picks back up? You know, readers of this series will know that Cam has been in the story. There are other connections to Rebel Blue Ranch that Cam brings with her, and just kind of really seeing Dusty's perspective on that and kind of understanding, coming into the story, like that was one of the questions I was going to have was, like we know stuff about Cam already. We don't know that much about Dusty, but what is Dusty like? How did what
Right.
was Dusty's thoughts and feelings during Cam's? I don't want to like give away spoilers for anybody that hasn't read the whole series, so I'm trying to like dance
Yeah.
around it a little bit here. Um,
Right.
but yeah, that was like one of like the biggest questions I had coming into it, and I think the payoff is really really well done in terms of a believable character arc where for someone that doesn't think that that's a thing could see these two actually making it.
Totally. And I think with second chance romances, there's often like a lot of harm done, which is where I have a hard time with them. Is like, no, like don't go back to somebody who hurt you. But I think
Right.
with Cam and Dusty, it's just like they got their big love before they were ready. And to me, that felt really believable to have to like, leave that behind in order to figure out you like knew you were in love with someone before you knew yourself all the way. And for both of them to have the chance to kind of like do their thing and not have to like sacrifice something for one another or come to resent one another. They got to like go apart and come back together versus like I think if they would have like muscled their way through, I don't know if they would have, ended up together. So
Yeah.
no harm, just like life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll all make sense once folks read the book. Lila, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You have a huge day tomorrow. I'll end with a couple questions here. So I
Yeah,
know you've teased some projects already through your social media, so we'll skip that question. I'm gonna have to ask a different question.
you got it.
Did the guy with the mustache come through?
Did the guy with the mustache come through? He did come through. Um, I was signing all my pre-orders on Saturday, and a man came up to me with a copy of Done and Dusted because he had like seen me. I was signing out on the King's English, my local indie. They have a beautiful back patio. The weather was amazing, not like in Tucson where it's 91 degrees. We're sitting at like sunny and 75 right now. Absolutely gorgeous. And he had seen me out there and he brought me a copy of Done and Dusted and he told me to sign it and write my number in it. Um, and that he wanted to take me out on a date, which was smooth. I admire a man that shoots his shot. But I was so caught off guard and my hand was like shaking while I was like writing my phone number. I didn't think it was legible, but it was. So yeah, hopefully, we'll talk more after the Wild and Wrangled tour. I'm about to have like the busiest 2 weeks of my life thus far. But what a fun little meet cute anyway.
Yeah, seems like
You're asking the questions that all the girlies want to know the answer to,
absolutely. That's my
uh,
job.
according to the DMs. So when this comes out, I'll push them this way.
Sounds great. All right, last question, Lila. What's the last great thing that you've read?
Ooh, that's a good question. So many things. I think the last great thing that I read, the thing that like consumed me and I like couldn't think about anything else was The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. I'm a big Stephen Graham Jones fan. I don't read romance while I'm drafting romance, and I tend to be drafting romance more times than not these days. And horror is my second favorite genre. So love horror, and that was just like an absolute masterpiece. And Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green.
Yes, two great choices. Awesome. Well, Lyla Sage, thank you so much for joining us. Uh, Go out, grab every copy of the Rebel Blue series that's out there. Good luck with your tour that kicks off tomorrow, and hopefully we'll see you in the future for another series.
You'll never get rid of me, Crispin.
Good to know. Good to know. Thank you so much, Lyla.
Thank you.